Okay. Bad thoughts about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What else? Hmm? Desires, right? And what are those desires? We said that the desires are two: desire for wealth and desire for fame. And riya stems from that desire for fame. And this is the thing that Imam Ghazali is implying or alluding to, that this is the problem. This is what they felt in their hearts, that they were afraid to tell the Prophet ﷺ that we enjoy when the people seeing us do good deeds. We enjoy when the people see us praying. We enjoy when people see us giving zakat or fighting or taking part or fasting. Should we be destroyed even though it is something that we abhor? Like, we feel it, but we hate the fact that we feel this. Like, there's a there's a remorse that is associated with that. And they're saying to the Prophet ﷺ, like, we feel this remorse. Like, we feel bad that we feel this. Should we be destroyed? And he sallallahu alayhi wasallam responded, he said, huh? That this is a clear sign of faith. He says this feeling, this hatred that you have is actually iman. And this is interesting. That how he sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he summarizes this feeling, right? He talks about this feeling of hating something being the sign of iman, this discomfort that we have inside. And this is actually a really good gauge for us. When he sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he said, "Istafti qalbak," ask your heart. This is a good sign for us that if I'm doing something, right, if I'm engaging in something, and my heart is like, "Oh, that's not a good idea," like, I don't know about this, then what should I do? Not do it, right? I should avoid it. And how many times have we made mistakes because we didn't trust our own hearts, right? We didn't trust our own judgment. And if we look back and if we're being honest with ourselves, I shouldn't have said this to this person. I shouldn't have said this in that way. I shouldn't have done this action. I shouldn't have taken this away. And we know when we're wrong, right? We know when we should apologize. We know when we should deal with others. And like, I have very clear examples of this. That how do I know when I've overpunished my children? When I feel bad, right? That's when I know that, okay, you know what? I think I went too far. At that point, what should I do? The moment I have that realization or the moment I feel bad, I have to make up. And what do? I go and I apologize. I have to apologize, saying like, listen, I think I went too far, going this and that. Because if I did something right and I knew what was better for them, how would I feel? Right? I'd feel like, okay, I'm doing my job as a father in their upbringing and trying to make them better and trying to help them improve. And it's the same thing with a lot of the interactions that we have. Sometimes we sell something and we feel kind of grimy, right? Right? Like, we might have something and we sell it and we're like, oh man, like, I don't know if I should have sold that. That wasn't, that probably wasn't a good idea. Then don't. There are many times Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's not going to hold us accountable because we didn't know something. And the reason for that is many of us are familiar with the ayah, right? رَبَّنَا لَا تُؤَاخِذْنَا إِن نَسِينَا أَوْ أَخْطَأْنَا. That, oh Allah, don't hold me accountable for things that I have forgot or I am mistaken in. So if there are things that I don't know, and we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can overlook ignorance, right? He Azza wa Jal, He's willing to overlook ignorance. What is the only thing left? And where can I be held accountable? Allah has given me this compass, right? He's given me this moral compass inside to say, okay, you need to stay away from this and you need to do that. And someone might ask and someone might say, okay, well, don't our feelings misguide us sometimes? Absolutely, right? There's no doubt about that. I truly believe that there are times where our feelings do misguide us. But am I ever able to differentiate between what my feelings are and what my moral heart is telling me? Can we do that or no? I feel we can. I know when I'm being honest with myself, and I know when I'm being dishonest with myself. But what do? We tend to, well, we'll push it away. We'll dismiss it. So someone might say, like, okay, well, isn't following your heart just following your hawa? Isn't that just following your desires? No, because I know what my desires are, and I know what my heart is telling me. But these are two things. They're related. There's no doubt about it. But I know exactly most of the time when I'm doing something wrong when I'm engaging it and then when I'm following through with it, right? I just have that discomfort, right? I'm probably eating something I shouldn't be eating. I'm probably wearing something I shouldn't be wearing. I'm probably, living somewhere I shouldn't be living, right? Like I just have this discomfort that's there. And then we'll trick ourselves further and we'll be like, oh man, like how come I have all of these things happening to me? How come there's no barakah in my wealth, and how come there's no barakah in what I'm doing? Like I feel like everything's a challenge. Am I trusting myself? Right? And it's hard. It's not easy. It's not easy to do that. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. An-nafs al-lawama. What is a nafs al-lawama? A nafs al-lawama is self-reproaching. He's always not second guessing, right? I don't want us to fall, because second guessing can be waswasa, and I don't want us to fall into that. But the self-reproaching soul is the one that every interaction that we have is always questioning and asking and making sure that, okay, hey, did I do this in the best way? Did I present myself in the best way? Did I interact in the best way? Right? Is this the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam want me to act and want me to deal and want me to engage? Um, A man came to the Prophet ﷺ and he said, O Messenger of Allah, one of us has thoughts of such nature that he would rather be reduced to charcoal than speak about them. He ﷺ said, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Subhanallah, who has reduced the guile of the devil to evil prompting. He ﷺ, he's reminding him, saying that you already won. How? Because you recognize it. Ahsant. Good. Like, you recognize the thought was wrong. You recognize it was evil. And just that recognition has given you victory. Because he ﷺ, he said that he's saying that this is victory because you're not acting on it. You're not actually um, exacting this out, right? You're not doing that. You've recognized at the point where it's still growing in your heart. Because we said that riyah is similar to what? Weeds. And if it's similar to weeds, the moment I recognize it, that's the best time for me to remove it. And it's the easiest time. And for those of you who have weeds, right, when the weed is small, how easy is it to pull from the ground? Right, it's super easy, right? You literally, you can just take just two fingers and you can pluck it, and you'll take it out with the root. And the moment it grows, what happens? It's hard, and if you pull and you yank, and what happens? It just breaks, right? Just the surface breaks, and guess what's still in the ground? The roots. So that's why it's always important that the moment we see it and we recognize it, that we pull it out, we remove it, so that it doesn't set in our hearts. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. Abu Hazm, he said, whatever you dislike about yourself will not harm you, for it's from your own self. But if you are pleased with it, then blame yourself for it. What does he mean? Yes. You're going to ask a question, you're going to answer. Okay. No questions. You have to answer this first. If you answer this, then I'll let you ask. Hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. So you're saying that the things that you are pleased with, that is complacency. It's about? Okay. You're saying it's like it's ghurur, yani it's like pride and arrogance. Okay. طيب. Huh. It can be. Huh. Good. Right? So recognition isn't good enough. Absolutely. What else? Huh. If I dislike something about myself, it will not harm you. Is he talking about like physically? No. So if I don't like the fact that I'm cheap, for example, but he's saying here, whatever you dislike about yourself won't harm you. So if I dislike my stinginess, ah, so not quite. So just that feeling in and of itself, where is it coming from? Where is it stemming from? Right? It's stemming from the heart, right? So that this issue, this love of whatever it is, love of wealth, love of pride, love of self, right? This is all of these things are stemming from the heart. And me disliking it, is it going to harm me? Right? If I dislike my cowardice, right? If I'm a coward and I dislike it, am I actually disliking myself? Right? I'm disliking the action. I'm disliking that I might feel like this. And he says, but if I'm pleased with it, then what happens? Huh. Right? You're going to be blind to it. You're not going to do anything about it. It's nothing is going to change. And me hurting it or me hating it, it's not actually hurting like my physical self, right? It's actually in my benefit. So the moment I recognize something about myself that I dislike, the moment I recognize something about myself that I hate, and it can be any of these qualities, right? Maybe I'm not kind. Maybe I'm not generous. Maybe I'm not brave, right? And just recognizing those things. Does anybody like looking in, you know what I mean? And I'm not the physical mirror, but like nobody likes looking in their spiritual mirror and being like, you're such a coward, right? Right? Like nobody likes that. Nobody likes looking at it and be like, you're so cheap, right? Nobody likes doing that. But it's hard, right? Like getting to the point where you recognize those faults, like in ourselves, is very difficult. It's very challenging. You know, I mean, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. But that's where the challenge is. Yeah, it's fadl. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Because the first person, what is he constantly doing? He's self-reflecting and assessing, right? The second person, what happened? Well, just like you said, that person is what? Complacent. He doesn't care. Yeah. Ahsant. Yeah. That exactly. What am I going to change? If I'm okay with the fact that I'm a coward, am I ever going to stand up for somebody that is oppressed? Probably not. Tfadal. Yeah. مثل إيش? So here, what he's talking about is, I would assume, the things that are harmful, right? Because these are the things that you dislike. That's where he's referring back to. In general, I agree with you. So, because there's a big difference between things that are laudable, things that are mutable, things that are immutable, right? So for example, if I dislike my height, I'm sorry. So we could talk about the permissibility of that surgery, right? Uh, Absolutely not, right? Because this is very different. Yes, sure, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yes. So, mhm. That's another problem. Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. So if I have laudable qualities, like you mentioned, right? So if I'm actually kind and I'm pleased with myself, but 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 this yeah. So but this is also a type of complacency, because if I'm happy with my level of kindness, will I ever become kinder? Oh, it might be riyah or whatever the case might be, right? You know, because now you've fallen into riyah. But this idea of even being pleased with myself, it's like, man, I really kill. I really. You're saying good job to who? Right on the effort, because the thing is, should I be proud of the work and the contributions that I make? Absolutely. But there's nothing wrong with that. But there's a difference between taking pride in something and taking pride in myself, right? So taking pride in like an action, right? The fact that, alhamdulillah, I'm glad I was able to donate to this cause, or I'm glad I was able to give time to this person, or I'm glad that I was able to teach this, right? These are different contributions that you can make. There's something wrong with being proud of those things. Does that make me an amazing person? No. No, forget perfection. يعني خلي الكمال. I'm saying, does that make me an amazing person? Not at all. Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad I'm not like that. Absolutely. But that there's a difference in taking a lesson, from others. There's a reason Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about Fir'aun. There's a reason he talks about Haman. There's a reason he talks about like Talut, right? He talks about all these evil people. Why? To learn. Ahsant. Yeah, so we can take a ibrah, so we can take a lesson from it, so that we again, the goal is to what? Self betterment, self improvement. What is the problem with complacency and stagnation? Eventually, you're going to start to fall, right? Eventually, that is guaranteed. Like I really had a good question one day. Is like, okay, well, what is the difference between you know complacency and contentment? Because they as an observer, they look the same. Contentment will only push you to grow. Complacency will only push you to fall. Yeah, yeah, mm, hmm absolutely. Yeah, 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 yeah. No, it's thanking Allah Subhanahu wa Taala that He didn't, that He didn't test me with whatever He tested him with. Yes. Yeah. Like I don't envy that position. I don't want to be in that position. Um, and sometimes even how we view people and like how we view others. Like the nice thing about Ghazali is that he keeps it very self-centric, right? Like this, a lot of this is a focus on the self. It's not on like, oh, how do you deal with, how do you look at other people? No, that's never the goal here. The goal is always self-respection, introspection, bettering ourselves, improving, right? That's always the focus here, and that's something that's should always be appreciated. When it comes to looking and dealing with others, that whole this whole paradigm shifts, right? The whole view shifts on how we deal with people and how we look at others. Because if someone who appears to be better than me, should I make dua that Allah make me like him? No. Why? Because you don't know, right? Ultimately, you don't know. Does it take away from how good or bad this person is? Not at all. And it's amazing, even when we want examples or we want to be like someone, who does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put forward as an example? Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. لقد كان لكم في رسول الله أسوة حسنة. Not in anyone else. It's like you want an example, you want to follow anyone, you want to uh, be like anyone, you want to imitate anyone, then imitate Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Because we know for sure his sincerity, we know for sure his efforts, we know for sure his thoughts, we know for sure that ما كان ينطق عن الهوى, right? He never used to speak out of his desire. He always used to speak sincerely, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So it becomes very easy, like even from that type of model. And even if we see someone in a worse situation, or someone who's like, man, this guy, like all he does is steal and take advantage of others, they, then you find out, well, this guy built like 12 masajid with his own money, and he separated the money that he stole. Right? It's we just don't know. Right? We just don't know. I don't. Does it mean that I should want to be like that person? No, absolutely not. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Even when we speak, we're speaking from perception, right? We're not. Even during the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there were people who prayed, people who fasted, people who gave zakat, people who fought in jihad, and they were munafiqeen. Like we don't know what's in people's hearts. And we can never know. Um, and that's what I'm saying. It's so easy taking the prophetic model, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and making sure that like he is the gold standard. He is the one to follow. Salawatullahi salamu alayhi. So, um, yeah, sure. Yeah. No, pride is fine. There's nothing wrong with pride, right? So I'm being proud of my ethnicity, being proud of my education, being proud of my family, being proud of, there's nothing wrong with any of those things. When does it become an issue? Ahsant, yes. Right? When I start using that in a comparative sense, all of a sudden it's like, no, well, because my kid got into this or is doing this, he is better than. No, whoa, whoa, whoa. Had you said, okay, he did this, that's enough. Be proud of the accomplishment. That's great. Even our own personal accomplishments, right? There's certain things that we do. There's nothing wrong with being proud of them. But does that accomplishment make me better than anyone else? That's where it becomes a problem. And even who we are, like if there are certain identities that we have, like be proud of your identity. Be proud of the fact of where you were raised. Be proud of your heritage. Be proud of your family. Is like I remember one of my friends he used to he used to say all the time when we were in Saudi, you know, "أفتخر بعجمتي." He's like he's like عجمتي. Like I'm proud of the fact that I'm not Arab. That's fine, right? Like be proud of whatever you want. I said right. It's a, and even Allah Subhanahu wa Taala says there's no difference between that. So, or I'm proud of the fact that you know I've accomplished this or I've done that. There's nothing wrong with those things. If I'm using those as stepping stones to put down others, and in a comparative sense, this is where it becomes extremely problematic. So he closes. He says here, he's like, listen, these whispers that we get, right? So we get these whispers from Shaitan, wanting you or provoking you or trying to get you to do certain things. It's okay because those whispers they can't what? They can't hurt you. They can't harm you because all they are is whispers. And it's amazing, like Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, He's given us a very easy way of dealing with the Shaitan. If I have an enemy or somebody who's trying to harm me, what can I do? Like if I have somebody like a person trying to come toward me, right? Right. So no, listen. I mean, I would pull out my gun, but like normally, like you can defend yourself, right? You can punch that person, you can kick that person. Like if you have a knife, you have a weapon, you do all these things. Like, what if the shaitan is whispering in my ear? What weapon can I take out? I make so I in order to protect myself from the unseen, I have to turn to the unseen, and that's not just with the shaitan. What if there are people who want to hurt me?
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
So what I always enjoyed about these discussions when it comes to dealing with the unseen, whether it be from the shaitan, whether it be from jinn, whether it be from magic, whether it be from people that we're not aware of who want to harm us, because all of these are what they're unseen, right? I can't deal with them directly. I find it amazing how Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, like he when he says things like innahum yakiduna kaida wa akidu kaida famahil al kafirin amhilhum ruwaida. that they scheme and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala schemes, and ultimately their deeds are going to be turned to dust. In what role did I play? Because those schemes are against me, right? إنهم يكيدون كيدا. They're scheming against me. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what role do I have in their schemes and machinations? What do I have to do? I don't have to do anything. It's so empowering. It's so empowering how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, you just need to work. You just need to do good deeds. You just need to move forward. All of this is noise. That's it. These people who are talking about you, the people who are trying to undermine you, the people who are trying to destroy you, the shaitan trying to whisper, the black magic that's trying to affect you, all of these things is just noise. And it's very unfortunate that in many Muslim countries now, how much of our attention do these things take up? Right? It takes up a majority of our. Even when people come to me, it's like, oh, I lost my job. Immediately, what's the first thing they say? Sihr. It's like, oh, I have a bad relationship with my son. What happened? Asabahu jinn. Right? Right? This is always like the first thing, and it's like, well, I remember subhanallah miskina. Like I had a woman come to me and she was like, man, my son, he's been acting really bad and he's doing all this and da da da. And I was like, okay, I was like, do you talk to him? And she was like, no, not really. And I'm like, okay, this is not really going in the in a good direction. And I was like, what makes you think that this is the case? And she was like, oh, can you just do ruqya on him? I was like, sure, if that's what you like, if that's what you request. I was like, I just have a few steps before I get to the ruqya, and I was like, we have to get to step one. She was like, what's that? I was like, okay, is he praying on time? And she was like, no, he doesn't pray. And I'm like, okay, if someone doesn't help themselves, then there's very little that I can do to help them. I was like, I can fulfill your request, but I'm almost sure that there's very little change that's going to happen. Or some people will complain and be upset about the number. Is like, oh, well, I lost my job and then I got into an accident and I did this and that, blah blah blah. And I was like, all of these things that happen. I was like, do you need glasses? Like, yeah, I can't afford getting glasses. And I'm like what? There seems, yeah. I was like, there seems to be a gap in your thought process here, and it's amazing, subhanallah, how most of the obstacles that we face in our lives are the ones that we ourselves have created, right? It's not the ones that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or the ibtila that comes. It's usually the obstructions that we create. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us two very powerful tools, right, to avoid a lot of these pitfalls and mistakes. He's given us the ability to seek shura, to ask others, to seek counsel, and like, hey, I'm about to do this. What do you think? And making istikhara, right? So that I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to put khair in my decision. But it's the lack or the few people that actually utilize those tools because it'll help avoid most pitfalls that we all deal with and that we all fall into. Um, it's not, and even if it fails, like I make istikhara, like I consult all the right people to open a business, I open in the right area, but I make istikhara and it fails. Type. At this point, I can still take solace in the fact that I took all the steps necessary to reach that point, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Ala inna awliya la khawfun alayhim wa la hum yahzanun." That they have no remorse. Right? They did everything that they were supposed to, and they're not worried about what has happened. Okay, I lost my business. It's okay. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intended. I took all of the steps that I needed to take to get to where I am. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq. We'll stop here. There's no class next week. I'll be traveling, inshallah. But we'll resume class the week after, inshallah. جزاكم الله خير والله أعلم وصلى الله على خير خلق نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم